Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show for on this April Fool's Day, April 1st. Time flies. It's already April 1st. Only to talk about a two-game slate on this Final Four Saturday. Adam, how are you doing this Saturday morning?
Doing pretty well. No complaints. Didn't go out last night, so I feel good. That's always, key to my Saturday morning shows. So, no, I'm awake. I feel good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well myself. I also didn't go out last night. I will be going out after this show for a birthday brunch, but so Saturday will be a day bender for me. Do you have Saturday bar? Sorry?
I said those are always fun.
Yeah, no, those can get off the chains quick. If I don't know if it's a bottomless pit. So.
I'm glad to see your windows are still intact.
Yeah, no, the emergency sirens were popping off last night.
Well, I saw the roof collapse or whatever somewhere in Illinois.
Yeah, but that was 70 miles outside the city, and then I was like, oh, it's gonna be really windy, and let's see, but trees were like shaking, nothing like too drastic happened here, so my windows sustained the winds over here, but it's like that spring tornado season around here, so we'll see what ends up happening as spring progresses. But two-game slate, it's a very interesting slate in terms of seeding purposes for all four teams in play. We got Dallas going to Miami. We got the Clippers going to New Orleans. And this two-game slate, we're going to break it down. It's going to be a very quick show, but I want to talk about our presenting sponsor, Bet365. They are having an amazing promotion still running. And like we said last time, the offer was going to go away. They're nice enough to keep one around still. All you got to do is bet $1 and win $365. And not $365. Sorry, take that back. It's only $200 today, and don't miss out on that. You just have to bet $1. You got to be residing in these four states. That's found in the link in the description. You have to be in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, or Virginia. You just bet $1, and you'll get $200 in Bet365 bet credits. It's as good as it gets. It's not as good as last week, but it's still damn pretty good. It's the greatest way to start your building your bankroll, and then using all our betting tools that we have to offer to take your betting experience to the next level. So do not miss out on this Bet365 offer. It's too good to be true. I had to lead off the show just because of how good the offer is. Find the link in the chat. And we'll go ahead and get started. Hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks so much for joining us on this April 1st Saturday morning. We'll go ahead and start with Dallas. Dallas is in a free fall, to lack of a better term. Luka getting hurt. Kyrie pretty much saying it's a clusterfuck right now. And this team got lucky last night as OKC dropped one against that shorthanded Pacers team. And now Dallas has a chance to gain that game back with a win today in Miami. You got Luka at 12-1 on FanDuel, 11-7 on DraftKings. Kyrie comes in at 9,200 on both sites. It's the 200 monster here. And with these two guys just soaking up so much usage, usually on larger slates, we really don't look at anyone else. And now in a two-game slate, you kind of have to play some of these other guys. Let's lead off with Luka and Kyrie. How do you feel about those two guys? And then we'll go a little bit deeper into the rest of the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, on larger slates, we kind of don't even look at those guys that all that often recently. But on this slate, they do matter. They have gotten a little bit less expensive as well. Luka and Kyrie both dropped, I believe, $300 from their last game. 11-7 for Luka, 9,200 for Kyrie. But they're both popular, and they both should be, because it's just a totally different game when you're playing a two-game slate. There's nowhere near the same level of mid-range plays. There's not a bunch of $7,000 guards that can realistically score the same fantasy points as Kyrie. And so it just pushes you towards going to those, the top projected guys a little bit more, because there's just fewer alternatives. And so getting to Luka, getting to Kyrie, both obviously are going to look very, very appealing here. They still cut into each other's rates, but you should expect huge playing time from them. Dallas has to win these games, like you were saying. They have tried as much as they can to play themselves out of the playoff picture. Oklahoma City is doing their best to keep them in it, but you're expecting huge minutes from these guys. You got 37 and change last game from Luka. You got 40 from Kyrie. So clearly they're both going to look good. But then, like you said, you kind of have to move on to the other pieces as well that normally we get to write off. And, I think the next two up are Tim Hardaway Jr. at 5,600. He played 36 minutes last game. We know that he's very clearly the third option with Kyrie and Luka. So he's not a great point per minute guy, and that's why you would have a tendency not to pay attention to him on a larger slate. But on a two-gamer at 5,600, if you're expecting around 34 to 36 minutes, that's going to make Tim Hardaway look pretty good. Dwight Powell's only 3,200. He's getting some ownership. That's a lot riskier, I think, than Hardaway because the playing time isn't nearly as locked in. For example, last game you got 10 minutes from Dwight Powell, and you have a fully healthy Dallas front court. Maxi Kleber's active, Christian Wood's active, JaVale McGee's active. So there's no guarantee Dwight Powell gets a lot of minutes. But at 3,200, if he even gets like 18 minutes, that ends up being a useful play as well.
Yeah, it's a very interesting 2-game slate with a lot of these guys who just don't pick up much usage, but the minutes are on the table, and you're just hoping for one of them to have that outlier spike efficiency offensive game there. How do you feel taking about chances on a guy like Jaden Hardy, who has it upside when sometimes given minutes? He's 5,800 over there on FanDuel, a little too expensive, but over there on DraftKings, he's 4,800. I know he doesn't get a grade out as a good point per dollar play. A lot of these Dallas guys will not, but how do you feel about a guy like Hardy on a 2-game slate? Tough Miami spot, but we're just looking for guys who have upside on this 2-game slate, kind of differentiate your lineup.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to articulate a reason why you would like Jaden Hardy at 4,800 because realistically, you can't expect him to play that many minutes, but he does at least give you that potential, like you're saying, of if he somehow finds the minutes, he probably pays off the salary. I don't know exactly how he finds those minutes, but at least you kind of only have to worry about one thing with him. Whereas with a lot of players, it's like, oh, well, if they play 10 minutes more than I expect and they play a lot better than I expect, they'll be good. With him, it's just, if he happens to somehow play more minutes, then he could pay it off. So certainly nothing that I would be going out of my way to get to, but he is only 4% owned. And one thing that I do think you could point to as a positive for him is that in the second half last game, he did actually play minutes alongside Kyrie and Luka. In the first half, every minute he played was without one of them on the floor. And if that was going to always be the case, it would be really problematic for trying to come up with a scenario where he plays more minutes, since we're expecting, close to 40 minutes from both of those guys. But in the second half, you did get very early in the third quarter, and from the 8-minute 33-second mark of the third quarter until basically the end of the third quarter, Kyrie subbed out with 2 minutes to go. But you got a lineup where all three of them were on the floor, along with Hardaway and Maxey. That at least gives you the potential for him to find more minutes without it coming at the expense of Luka and Kyrie. I would say that the chances of him finding more minutes are higher if he can find those minutes at the expense of Reggie Bullock or Tim Hardaway, as opposed to it having to be at the expense of Luka or Kyrie. You muted? Still muted. Or I'm hard of hearing. I don't know. Should I just keep going? Okay. Yeah. So beyond Hardy, obviously as a very deep play, I do actually like Maxi Kleber here at 4K. He's projected to go a little bit under owned, 7% ownership, 13% chance of being optimal, but there's a very good chance he's in the closing lineup. They want him out there for defensive reasons, and while he's not a great point per minute fantasy producer, he does space the floor. He does give you the potential to knock down some threes, and he is still inexpensive. So especially right now with twice the ownership coming to Dwight Powell, who again played 10 minutes last game, I think the playing time for Maxi Kleber is a lot more consistent. Again, he's not the best point per minute guy, but he has power forward eligibility. He's still only 4K. The playing time is more solidified. So I like getting the Kleber, especially if that ownership stays down around 7%. Reggie Bullock at 5,500 or 4,500 rather, we know is a pretty terrible point per minute guy. He is likely to play north of 30 minutes. He's only getting 9% ownership. So those two guys both look to be going a little bit under owned, even though clearly you're never going to be excited about getting to either of them. And then if you wanted to go back to sort of a Jaden Hardy-esque play, Christian Wood's coming in at 5,400. I have no confidence in his playing time. He played 12 minutes last game, but just like Hardy, and even to a bigger extent than Hardy, if Christian Wood, for any reason, plays more minutes, that's all you need. The production's going to be there. It's just a matter of him not getting yanked off the floor because Jason Kidd hates watching him play basketball. So he's similar to Hardy in that regard, where if he just happens to, for any reason, to find more minutes, he is likely to pretty easily pay off that salary. It's just from a median standpoint, you're not expecting those minutes, and so it makes him overall unlikely.
Yeah, let's give it another shot, Jacob. I think, am I good? All right, great. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think those are all excellent points with the rest of the Mavs rotation here. It's a 2-game slate. We're just trying to create. Sometimes in 2-game slates, I think I get at fault myself. I just try to create narratives, try to play some of these guys, and sometimes it burns me, sometimes it works out. Just kind of the nature of 2-game slates are. But it's a high risk, high reward on those type of the rest of the Dallas team, where certainly one of those guys might be good enough to crack that winning lineup on a 2-game slate here. But let's go ahead and move on to Miami. Hit that like and subscribe button for us. And also, if you guys have yet to check out the Odd Shop show happening Monday through Friday, all our great betting personalities are giving you all the betting needs for you to take your betting picks to the next level. It's a fun little hour show that happens on the Odd Shopper channel. Make sure to check that out. And also, make sure to check out Chalkboard, a little free, exciting sports betting platform that we have going. A lot of the same guys you see here on Stochastic and Odd Shopper in there, dropping a lot of great, insightful knowledges on price picks, Odd Shopper premium picks in there. So a free platform. Don't miss out on that. Sign up in the link in the description. Jacob will drop that in that chat. But onto the Miami side we go. Miami slight favorites here. Bam Adebayo is questionable. He's 8,100 and 7,400. On a 2-game slate, organically, he's going to grade out a pretty solid play, in my opinion, if he's going to go. It'll get very interesting if he's going to be out. Jimmy Butler is $9,400 and $8,500 on FanDuel and DraftKings, respectively. Tyler Hero continues to be, in my opinion, underpriced, but his production has dipped as the salary has dipped as well. $6,400 there over on DraftKings. And the situation with Kyle Lowry, he remains questionable. How do you feel about this Miami Heat big three? That's Bam, Butler, and Hero on this 2-game slate tonight.
Yeah, I think they look pretty good. We know Dallas isn't very good defensively. You have very reasonable price tags here. Bam, if he's good to go at 7,400, should pretty much have his way against this front court. Hero at 6,400, I'm right there with you. He's been really disappointing in a lot of the games that I've rostered him recently, but the playing time's still there. You should still be expecting him to be around a fantasy point per minute guy, I think. Even with this team healthy, that's pretty much what we've seen this year. So with that price tag falling, it sort of just alleviates the concerns that I have. If you were still talking about like a $7,500, $7,600 Hero, I would care a lot more about trying to figure out exactly why he's having these poor games. But if the price tag is going to fall with the poor games, then I don't really care what the reasons are. I'm still going to keep playing him. So it just makes it, less risky and accounts for whatever's going on. So those two look really good at those salaries. Butler at 8,500, certainly a strong option as well. All of them are pulling a ton of ownership, but it's all backed up by the optimal percentages as well. 64% chance of Hero being optimal, 61% ownership. So while that's a massive number, there's no real issue there. Same goes for Bam, 49% ownership, 50% chance of being optimal, 43% ownership for Butler, 46% chance of being optimal. So even though they're really, really popular, it doesn't strike me as a team where I'm like actively looking to get away from the ownership, because it's just all backed up by how likely they are to be in the best possible lineup.
Yeah, and it's let's talk about the situation if Bam Adebayo were to be out. Who gets the significant uptick in minutes? Is it a Kevin Love? Is it a Cody Zeller? Like, how should we handle the situation if Bam's out?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one. I think you would see Cody Zeller at 3,100 at least play enough minutes to be a good value. I think there's a good chance he would start. And if he does become clearly a good value, like we're talking about $3,200 Dwight Powell pulling 14% ownership right now. If you get Cody Zeller in the starting lineup, that just is going to pull tons and tons of ownership. Obviously, even projected as the backup right now, he's pulling 12% ownership. So that kind of just speaks to how starved you are for cheap value on a slate where not only do you have all of these Miami guys, but you have Luka, you have Kyrie just from this game. So it kind of just speaks to how, you have somebody with an 11 fantasy point projection pulling 12% ownership. That's just the state of value right now. But if you were to get Bam out, he's just going to far and away become a top value option. Kevin Love would probably look better with Bam out. We were seeing him get backup center minutes while Zeller was sidelined. So if Bam is out, I would expect that, assuming Zeller starts, Love ends up being the backup center, makes him look a little bit more productive at 4,200, or at least gets backup center minutes. Maybe not all of them, but at 4,200, would end up looking pretty good. He looks fine regardless. Like, you're getting pretty consistent rotations from him where he either plays the first quarter and the third quarter and plays like 16 to 18 minutes, or he plays the first, second, and third quarter and plays like 22 minutes. Either one of those on this slate can be fine. Obviously, you're going to prefer that he get the 22 minutes, but at 4,200 on this slate, no real issues with him. If Kyle Lowry's in, he should give you around 24 minutes at 4K. Caleb Martin is cheap at 3,900. He's getting a bunch of ownership, actually projected to go a little bit over-owned, but at that price tag, I still understand why he's getting the ownership. He's likely to give you mid to upper 20s. I do think it's interesting that Gabe Vincent's not really pulling ownership. If Lowry is in, you're probably only looking at around 24 minutes from Vincent. If Lowry's out, you could easily see, upper 20s, but it's just interesting to me that, Vincent at 3,900 is only 9% owned. Caleb Martin at 3,900 is 28% owned. Martin should be the more popular of the two, given that he has small forward, power forward eligibility, and a 17% chance of being optimal as a result instead of 12%. But I don't think there should be a 3-to-1 ownership gap between those two guys who project to play pretty similar minutes and have pretty similar games.
Yeah, I definitely think just keeping an eye on that questionable news is going to be really important. And now, how about the Kyle Lowry situation? He's questionable. Do you like him if he plays? And now let's talk about him if he's out. Talk to me about both those scenarios with Lowry.
If he plays, I like him. 4K flat. We can expect him to, play 22 to 24 minutes somewhere in there. He's just inexpensive for the slate. It's another just good example of somebody that on a normal size slate, you would not really be even mentioning. But on this slate, he's pulling 25% ownership with a 35% chance of being optimal. We only have him projected for 19.4 DraftKings points, but that just gets it done a lot of the time on the slate. So if he's in, I like going there. If he's out, it makes Gabe Vincent look quite a bit better. And it also would potentially open the door for more Oladipo to be, possibly a decent play, for Duncan Robinson to show up at 3,500. But if Lowry's in, I have a hard time getting to either of Oladipo or Robinson.
Yeah, that's the team that has some injury news, and like a high minutes guy, high usage guy like Bam certainly will change things up for this Miami Heat team. Any final thoughts on this game? Any game theory perspective things that you want to share about this Miami versus Dallas team?
I don't really think so.
Okay.
I guess one other, we didn't mention him because he's at a different price point, but Max Strus is getting 1/6 or 1/7 the ownership of Caleb Martin. He's $500 more expensive. We have him projected 2 points less. So that's why he's not getting the ownership. But it is just sort of interesting because if Caleb Martin were to not play the game that you're expecting him to play, the most likely guy to get more minutes would be Strus. So it kind of works as a leverage play there. But again, not anything you're excited about, not anything you feel good about, just kind of at 4% owned. I thought, was worth a mention.
Yeah, Strus certainly has an upside, especially where you get the 3-point bonus for sure. Now, for those of you guys who are playing MLB and haven't tried one of the stochastic MLB products, we got an exciting MLB promotion still going on. MLB is back. You can find the link in the description box below. Don't miss out on that exciting MLB contest all weekend long. And a ton of great tools. You get this top stacks tool, top pitchers tool. Those are by far the two most important tools to set you up for success in MLB on the stochastic side of things. But click that like and subscribe button. And here we are, moving on to the nightcap with the Clippers going to New Orleans, and a very interesting situation where Ty Lue mentioned last night saying, I believe Kawhi Leonard is going to play on the back-to-back. And we'll see how many minutes he ends up playing. But Kawhi comes in on $10,000 on both sides. It's going to grade out as a really good play, in my opinion, just because of no Paul George there. Russ comes in at 88 and 8,700 on FanDuel and DraftKings, respectively. I believe Norman Powell and Eric Gordon are questionable, and that will certainly change things up a little bit, in my opinion, in terms of the rotation. Well, let's start off with Kawhi Leonard. They're $10,000 player for the Clippers. How should we handle Kawhi for the 2-game slate?
Yeah, I mean, he does look good here. There's obviously some risk because we don't know exactly what the playing time is going to look like, but assuming he plays his normal minutes, they didn't play him in the second half last game. Assuming he plays his normal minutes, he's going to look good, but that is not a guarantee. I mean, even if you get like 32 or 33 minutes, that's a problem at this price tag compared to the 37 or 38 that we would expect. So I think that's why you're seeing less ownership there, is the risk, and also the fact that he's $1,500 more expensive than Jimmy Butler on a slate where we're playing Cody Zeller and Dwight Powell for value. That $1,500 probably goes a pretty long way. So I get why he's not as popular, but he just has it. He has that potential to just be the guy that you have to have. Like, he has the potential to be the highest scorer on the slate. Obviously going up against Luka in that regard is unlikely, but you're also getting a big salary discount there. And outside of Luka, he's pretty much just as likely as anybody to be the highest scorer. So he has that in his range of outcomes, which is nice. So I think he's a good, I'll say contrarian, like 17.5% on a 2-game slate. It's not really that high. So I think he's a good contrarian play. I think that in terms of how easy it is to get guys into your lineups and prioritize them, you're going to have a lot easier time getting to Jimmy Butler at that position. You're going to have a lot easier time getting to like Kyrie or Luka as far as pay up options.
Yeah, and I think that's something with this Clippers team, with Kawhi, if he's going to play, I think he's going to look outstanding. But now on to Russ. Russ is 8,800, 8,700. It does not look as good, obviously, when sharing the core with Kawhi Leonard. But a 2-game slate, can Russ have that outlier poor man's triple-double, the 10, 10, and 10? He certainly has that in his bag, but it's an expensive price tag for Russ. I think he's kind of like priced in an island. How do you feel about a Russell Westbrook fade on a 2-game slate in this type of scenario?
I don't really have a problem with it, but I think the ownership is low. Like, I think he's going under-owned, so I wouldn't call it like a fade in that, like, he's more popular than I think he should be, or like he's popular at all. I think he's a good tournament play, but at that price tag with Kawhi in, it's clearly a secondary option. Like, his playing time is more stable without Paul George. You're just much less likely to get closing lineups that don't have Russell Westbrook, but the price tag did come up, and with Kawhi playing, Kawhi still, clearly the number one in this offense. So that's going to cut into Westbrook, but the ceiling's still there. You're probably getting 34 plus minutes from him, and he's only pulling 13% ownership. So I think he's kind of similar to Kawhi in that I like the upside that they offer. I like the fact that they're both sub 20% owned on a 2-game slate with that upside. But then you just start, like, if I were to say, oh, well, I think you should just be jamming in Kawhi, then I have to explain why I'm not playing an $8,500 Jimmy Butler, or in Westbrook's case, a $6,400 Tyler Hero.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point right there. Before we touch on the rest of the Clippers rotation, I want to mention yet again the limited time offer from Bet365, our sponsor today. All you got to do is bet $1, get $200 in bonus bets at Bet365. The deposit's required. Get those bonus bets. That's a great way to start your betting bankroll. And also, you got to be 21 and older in those 4 states that I mentioned. That's New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, or Virginia. And then you got to be 21 and older. And if you have a gambling issue, make sure to call 1-800-GAMBLER. Make sure to take advantage of that bonus promotion that we have going, because it's going to expire tomorrow. I'm pretty sure it's going to expire tomorrow. And make sure to take advantage of it. Find that link in the description. Don't miss out on it. If you're joining us on podcasts, make sure to leave a 5-star review for us as well on your podcast platform. The rest of the Clippers rotation, Adam, it's going to be tricky, especially with Powell and Eric Gordon questionable. And if we don't get that news early enough, it's going to make things very interesting. I think Norm Powell at $4,600 in DraftKings, if he goes, he looks like a solid tournament option. I think he's going to get quite a bit of ownership if he plays. And now if he's out, that's going to open up minutes potentially for a guy like, I think Bones Highland will be asked to share more minutes on the court with Russ. Terrence Mann's going to play a little bit more minutes. How do we handle the Norman Powell situation, especially if he's in versus if he's out?
Yeah, it's really big news. We have him projected for 54% ownership right now with a 60% chance of being optimal. $4,600 shooting guard, small forward, played 24 minutes in his first game back, played 25 minutes yesterday. If he's good to go, I'm expecting him to play, 24 to 26 minutes, somewhere in that range here, and look like a really, really good value. But then if he sits, it does open up other stuff. Bones Highland only played about 6 minutes in the first half yesterday. I would expect that number to be higher if Norm Powell's out. I would expect that you're getting, at least 20 minutes or so in the game from Highland, with the potential for more if he plays well. Like you said, you could certainly see more Terrence Mann if Powell is out also. Maybe Robert Covington takes on a bigger role. It would create a situation where there is some risk in exactly who ends up stepping in and taking those minutes and producing. But we've seen Highland typically be that guy recently. He's played well. Covington, had the one massive game. He's obviously still always going to be risky, but those guys would be likely to step up, and even more so if Powell and Eric Gordon are out, because that's really opening up a lot of minutes to where, like, you would expect Batum to play a lot, you'd expect Mann to play a lot, you would expect Covington and Highland both to get decent minutes. So that really, the news on Powell and Gordon really has the potential to change this slate, in that those guys are there are guys on the Clippers. They're not, Cody Zeller, Dwight Powell cheap, but they're cheap enough that they would alter your roster construction so that you probably don't have to play as much of those really bad value plays. You can get to these guys, and maybe you lose a little bit of Luka and have to turn it into more Kyrie or something like that. But that's probably a preferable situation to saying, like, oh, well, we're going with, relatively chalky Dwight Powell today just so we can fit Luka. So, you would certainly get better, more interesting value options that open up here.
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird. I feel like the Gordon being out and Powell being out, if one or the other are out, the same like analysis goes for each player. I feel like they're both play the same role. So it's a very interesting situation, especially when Norman Powell is gathering so much ownership. That's going to be very interesting for lineups to see how that works out. But let's talk about the front court here. That's Ivica Zubac, Mason Plumlee, Robert Covington. We've seen Covington surpass Marcus Morris in this rotation. Marcus Morris remains out, but Covington had a very impressive game. I want to say not last night, but the game before with the Grizzlies. Robert Covington, he can rack up steals and blocks in a hurry, can shoot the three. He's 4,100. I think he's sneakily already in play. How do you feel about the front court rotation for the Clippers?
If everybody's in, I have a hard time getting to Covington. That 2 games ago was, I think, pretty fluky. Like, he was the last guy off the bench in that game, and he just played out of his mind. Yesterday in the first half, with everybody in, he played a total of 3 minutes. I'd have a really difficult time getting to him. Like, if you wanted to make a case, it would just be random shit happens and it's a 2-game slate. Like, from that standpoint, sure, he's fine. But if everybody's in, I'd have a hard time getting there. I also have a hard time getting to Bones, but I think that if one guy is out, if one of Powell, Gordon is out, this whole group just becomes like risky, but certainly playable. The Covington, Mann, Highland group. And then if they're both out, I'm happy to get to any of them. But just based on the recent rotations, I'm still skeptical on Covington in particular, just because, like I said, even that good game against, Memphis, he was the last guy off the bench in the first half, just played, way, way, way above his head. And then you just saw like another massive fourth quarter from him. So I didn't get the impression that it's anything sustainable there.
Yeah, I think that's a very well way to put it there, because that was a very fluky game. I believe he went 6 of 6 from 3. And previously in NBA DFS, a guy like Robert Covington would be overowned the next game. And that recency bias ownership edge is completely evaporated now. It's been like that for the last couple of years, but it's something to I miss. I was one way to just pick up a quick edge, but here we are in 2023. Before we talk, wrap up this Clippers rotation, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed to the Stochastic channel yet. And let's wrap it up with Nick Batum and Terrence Mann. Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. I thought I had something to say, but I don't.
Yeah. Talk about Nick Batum and Terrence Mann. I know we've touched on them with the what-if scenarios, if-then scenarios with Gordon and Powell, but wrap it up with Mann and Batum for us.
Yeah, they both just look – well, Batum just kind of looks fine. He's been starting in place of Morris. He's not a great point per minute guy, but you do have the potential for him to play, 30 plus minutes. He played 23 yesterday, but that was a blowout loss to Memphis. In the first half, he played about 16 minutes. So again, was tracking around 32 minutes there. And the price tag on him is still reasonable at 4,700. So I don't mind getting into some Batum. Kind of surprised he's not getting a little bit more ownership right now, even with everybody projected in, just because we're so starved for value. But if guys get ruled out, that would certainly solidify his playing time as well. Mann, I think, is pretty dependent on somebody being ruled out. He started the second half last game in place of, I guess, technically Eric Gordon. Powell started in place of Leonard. But chances are, if my guess is that if Gordon is out, I have no idea. It's either Powell or Mann. I don't know which one they'd go to. If Gordon and Powell are out, I'm confident Terrence Mann is starting, and that would certainly make him look good at 5K. And then I think the last piece that we haven't touched on that is actually the second highest owned guy on the team is Ivica Zubac coming in at $5,100, pulling 33% ownership. No real issues with that here either. It's a Pels front court where, not that I care that much about center matchups because, I think it gets overstated because a lot of times, like you don't have to go big to match up with a big. You can just try and shoot the big off the floor. And so I think that kind of gets overstated, but it is a spot where you kind of just have two like identical guys facing off against each other, which always makes me feel a little bit more comfortable with playing time. So you have Zubats, going up against Joval here. Zubats should play big minutes. A natural pivot in tournaments is that Mason Plumlee is pulling 6% ownership at 4,400. Now, yesterday we saw Plumlee be the straight backup to Ivica Zubats, which is what you would expect and what we've typically seen. 2 games ago, and this is what I'd started to say before and then didn't, but 2 games ago in the second half, in that big Robert Covington game, Robert Covington was actually the first guy to sub in, and he subbed in for Zubats. Plumlee didn't sub in until later when Nick Batum went to the bench. So there's some non-zero chance that you get, especially with like Larry Nance as the Pels backup center, there's some chance that you get a little bit more Covington at the 5 and a little bit less Plumlee. But at 6% projected ownership for Plumlee, I'm not that concerned about that. The dream outcome for Plumlee is that Zubats gets in foul trouble and he just steps into 4 or 5 more minutes at 6% owned. So the center position for the Clippers is really interesting to me in that Zubats is clearly a good value, but I think Plumlee is getting slept on a little bit as far as his upside goes.
Yeah, I think Plumlee certainly can spike an upside. Keep in mind the other side, it is a Jonas Valanciunas matchup where he can certainly draw fouls on one way or the other. In a 2-game slate on DraftKings, do you have any issues if you land on both Zubac and Plumlee in the same lineup?
I probably won't set a rule against it because it's a 2-gamer. I still clearly don't prefer it, but the reason that I don't think it's necessary to set the rule is it just comes down to opportunity cost and alternatives. Like, if you just get the projected playing time for these guys, like let's say Zubats plays 30 minutes, let's say Plumlee plays 18, there's still a decent percentage of the time where Zubats puts up a score at 5,100 that you're happy with, and then Plumlee is still the best guy in his price range. Even in 18 minutes, he can do that. So that's why I wouldn't make it so I never get those lineups. I still, if I find that I'm getting like a ton of lineups that have Plumlee and Zubats, you can set a rule so that if you have Zubats, Mason Plumlee's projection decreases by 10%, something like that, and that'll help mitigate that problem. But especially if you're playing if you're playing 150 lineups on a 2-gamer, I don't think I would want 0 of those lineups, at least by design, to not have them together. I also wouldn't want 50 of them to have both. So kind of just monitor what you're getting. And also, I'm not saying that I would force it. If you just go through your normal process, you make 150 lineups, you have no Plumlee plus Zubats together. I'm not saying bump Plumlee so you get more lineups with them together. I'm just saying I wouldn't want to manually make that happen. Make it so I don't have any.
For sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. That was a loaded Clippers team with a lot of if then what if situations. And keep an eye on the news. Live Before Lock will certainly have that one to break down. I believe Live Before Lock will be at 6:30 Eastern tonight. And producer Jacob will be behind the scenes yet again for that one. So hit that likes button, hit that subscribe button. And also, if you haven't yet to rock the stochastic avatar, I highly recommend to do so, because if you meet the credentials of our avatar giveaway, you would be qualified to win a free month of Stochastic Platinum. So you've yet to take advantage of that for your subscription. It's available on DraftKings, FanDuel, or Yahoo. So all you got to do is sign up by filling the form at stochastic.com/avatar, and you rock the new Stochastic avatar, and then place in the top 3 of a 5,000 or more entries contest. Tweet at Stochastic Hall of Fame, send us a screenshot, and you'll be eligible to win a free month of Stochastic Platinum. So I'll drop the link in the chat here. Don't miss out on that. And we're now going to move on to the Pelican side of the team. Another team that's trying to win games. And here we are, $9,700 Brandon Ingram on FanDuel, $9,500 on DraftKings. BI's soaking up all the usage as long as Zion remains out. CJ McCollum, a very, very favorable $7,500 on DraftKings. Valanciunas is playing appropriate minutes. You like these minutes that Valanciunas has been playing of late. He's at $7,600. Trey Murphy can light it up from 3. He's at $6,000. Herb Jones, $4,900. Let's talk about these Pelican starters. They all are going to garner some significant to an ownership number that matters here on this 2-game slate. Brandon Ingram certainly sticks out with that usage. Talk to me about this Pelican starters. your preferences, what we can expect to get on our DFS lineups today.
Yeah, so Brandon Ingram looks really good. I'm disappointed that he's getting 42% ownership. I thought this was a spot where maybe he'd get slept on a little bit because he is so close in salary to Kawhi. He's 1,000 more than Butler. He's more expensive than Kyrie. I thought maybe I would pull this up and, Ingram wouldn't really be getting ownership, but he is. And so on the one hand, Brandon Ingram looks great. He is doing everything for this team. He not only is he, a massive usage guy here, like you said, without Zion, but he's taken over the primary playmaking role as well. And you're just seeing him consistently, out assist CJ McCollum coming off of a triple double last game where he had 10 assists. He's rebounding at a reasonably high rate as well. So I do really like him. I will say at 42% ownership, Kawhi does become a very natural pivot here, getting 1/3 the ownership of Brandon Ingram for only $500 more. From a range of outcome standpoint, Kawhi certainly can beat Ingram more than 1 in 3 times. But I do really like Ingram. I am disappointed that he is as popular as he is. That price tag on CJ McCollum is certainly fine. Like I said, he has sort of taken a backseat to Ingram, not only in terms of scoring, but in terms of playmaking as well, but he still does enough of both. And at 7,500 is cheap enough and playing enough minutes where he's still going to look like a good option. So getting to both of those guys as the 2 main priorities here looks good. And then the rest of the team gets a little bit dicier, but there's still a lot to like. With Joval at 7,600, I'm really interested to see what his playing time looks like here. 2 games ago, you had the Larry Nance reemergence game against Golden State. And the only real takeaway I had from that is at least we know they are willing to play Larry Nance those 25 minutes health-wise, because we didn't really know what his health was like. We didn't know, is he playing 13 minutes a night now because he really is that banged up? Do they just, really trust Joval more at this point, or what is it? Then we saw Nance play 25 minutes against Golden State. That is a matchup where if Nance is healthy, you expect him to play big minutes. So I didn't read into it as we're back to what we've had for most of the year, where you're getting like a 24-minute split between the two. But I did read into it as Nance is at least healthy enough to play those minutes. Then last game against Denver, you got another rotation that was very similar to what we've seen earlier in the year, where Larry Nance played 23 minutes, Joval played 25, Larry Nance closed both halves. So that's 2 games in a row. We've seen this rotation that we were getting earlier in the year, but that was also a Denver game where Jokic was out. So you had Jeff Green playing a lot of center minutes. You had Zeke Naji playing a lot of center minutes. I'm very curious to see what happens here, where you are getting a Clippers front court that is primarily Zubats and Plumlee. Now, this could just completely devolve into Larry Nance versus Robert Covington at the 5, and that's a whole separate thing. But I'm curious to see where the rotations go. I am nervous for Joval, though, because early in the year, it wasn't, or for most of the year, really, up until the Larry Nance injury, it wasn't a matter of there are Joval matchups where he plays 32 minutes and there are Nance matchups. It was, regardless of matchup, we're closing with Larry Nance, basically. And so that's my concern here, is if we're just back to that, I don't want Joval if he's playing 24 minutes at 24% ownership. The flip side, though, is if you tell me he plays 32 minutes, then 24% is probably low. So I'm interested to see how the rotation goes. I still don't have a great feel for it. I am concerned on Joval, though, based on the fact that it's 2 games in a row now that we've seen that old rotation that was really unfavorable to him. Similarly, Larry Nance, 3,700, pulling 20% ownership, coming off back-to-back mid-20s games. I think that's a good value piece to get to.
That was as in-depth as it can get for a 2-game slate there for the Pelicans rotation. Not much else to add there, but let's wrap up talking about this Pelicans team. Those wing players, your Herb Jones, your Josh Richardson, your Najee Marshall, those guys are all going to garner some ownership on this 2-game slate. Is it a mix and match situation? Are you okay getting to a couple of those guys in your lineup? We know they're kind of they don't carry that ceiling here, but on a slate where there's Brandon Ingram, there's Kawhi, there's Luka, there's Kyrie, we got to spend down somewhere. Is this a situation where Richardson, Najee, Herb Jones seem viable to you?
Yeah, they're just cheap enough that it's more about what they're letting you get into your lineup elsewhere than it is about them. And it is a mix and match situation to me, because none of them are good enough that you're pointing to them and saying like, oh yeah, I'm really confident in this guy. But when you look at them collectively, I think you feel pretty good about saying like at least one of these guys ends up being a good value play. And so you're just kind of trying to just mix them in and hope you land on the right one in the right lineup. Trey Murphy's been playing huge minutes. He is 6K. So he's kind of, he's at a different price tier than the rest of these guys, but he is playing really big minutes. Herb Jones at 4,900 should give you low to mid 30s typically. He's, still a little bit more expensive than the other guys, but a nice middle ground between Murphy and the value pieces. Then you get down to a sub 4K Josh Richardson, a $3,600 Najee Marshall. They're both pulling ownership as well, 25% for Marshall, 32 for Richardson. Again, you're not confident in their minutes. You're not confident in their production, but they're good enough point per minute guys. Najee Marshall at 0.82 DraftKings points per minute, Richardson at 0.78 since joining the Pels, that if one of them for any reason plays 22 to 24 minutes, they're going to look okay. The one thing here that I will point out, and this is purely a 2-game slate thing, 32% ownership Josh Richardson, 25% Najee Marshall, 3% Dyson Daniels. Playing time last game, non-garbage time, about 13 minutes for Najee Marshall, about 9 minutes for Dyson Daniels, about 18 minutes for Josh Richardson. Dyson Daniels is clearly, and we saw similar playing time the previous game as well, Dyson Daniels is clearly the third option of those three, but probably not at a 10-1 clip. He's a 0.72 DraftKings point per minute guy, so it's not like he's massively worse than Richardson or Marshall. Daniels just is sort of interesting to me at that ownership because, frankly, all of these guys suck, and I have no confidence in any of them. I kind of like the idea of just picking the guy that sucks that nobody else has.
No, I think that's a good way to put it on a 2-game slate for sure. And also, we got some really exciting news. As of yesterday, BetPro now will be providing MLB and NBA bets. So for all for one subscription. So do not miss out on BetPro. And if you haven't tried out BetPro, no better time to do so than today, because you'll get MLB bets, you'll get NBA bets. They're updating throughout the day and almost to the minute, updating when we get news. Check out the NBA BetPro trial. You can find that link in the description as well. It's an exciting product. It's been very popular. And also, Adam is going to be doing BetPro content on a daily basis. Am I right, Adam?
Yeah, I was going to say, for anybody that's been watching my NBA BetPro videos, for one, sorry about lying to you and saying that I would have them out starting yesterday. Tool wasn't quite ready yet, but those will be starting on Monday. Doing the same thing for MLB. I'll still have the NBA ones going, at least until we get to the point in the NBA season where it's impossible to do those in the afternoon. But I'll also be doing MLB ones starting on Monday. We actually have the tool ready now, and I will be putting those videos out.
Yeah, no, exciting times to be a BetPro subscriber for sure. Free trial. Don't miss out on that. Any final thoughts on this 2-game slate, Adam? Any rules that you want to mention? Any game theory thoughts? Anything that we didn't get to touch on between the Mavs and Heat, the Clippers and Pelicans? Anything that you have some final thoughts on?
No, I think we touched on it all.
Yeah, I think we touched on every viable rotational player that's eligible for a 2-game slate. I want to say thanks so much for everyone joining us this morning, this April 1st morning. But also, before I sign off, sign up for Bet365. Bet $1, get $200 in bet credits. This offer is going to expire very, very soon. Got to be in those 4 states. That's New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, and Virginia. Click that like button and subscribe button for us on this Saturday. Thanks so much yet again. Thank you to Adam. I hope everyone has a great Saturday. Until next.